I remember the first time that it happened. For the first time going out to a lake where there was nobody else. There was no cabins, no other humans on the water, nothing. My dad had bought this old truck so that he could take his fishing kayak out onto more increasingly remote lakes. That moment that I'm describing is when you push off. Sorry. I remember the first time that it happened as an adult. I wasn't really sure about what I was doing. I wasn't really sure what I was making or why I was making it. I just needed a change. I knew I needed to be out in the bush. Right away, I knew that that was going to be the most productive place for me to find new painting. So many things at stake that are well beyond my control, but somehow still seem to circle around the research that I then turn into painting. Everything that I've collected, all the research, all the photos, all the notes, all the video now, all that information is going to become the imagery in the new show for next year at Bau-Xi Toronto. The expectation of a journalist is often immediate. We can all imagine the reporter standing somewhere, holding a microphone in somebody's face, or a photojournalist running around with their camera taking shots. But the goal at the end of the day is to, as accurately and respectfully and articulately capture the moment, what the reality is on the ground. I guess this would be the third summer in a row to come and stand here and very intentionally make a drawing or make a painting of this place. I've made a bunch of paintings in the studio of this view of this river, and it's just kind of become important to come and see what it's doing, see how high the water is, see if there's any more clear cuts on the hillside. It doesn't look like there's any more this time, fortunately. Sometimes it'll take 8-10 months from the time that I experience something to the time that it becomes a painting on the wall. There's like a curation to my journalist practice. But the final output, the thing on the wall, increasingly to me, they are slow, painted journalism.
It's extremely important for people all over the world to know what's happening here on Vancouver Island and in British Columbia. BC stands out as one of the last jurisdictions on Earth who are still cutting down old-growth forests.
So much logging goes on the North Island that so many of us are unaware of because we don't have a connection to these places.
These are some of the most endangered and grandest intact unprotected old growth on Earth. Our old growth forests can store more carbon per hectare than the Amazon rainforest can. These are globally significant mechanisms for us to mitigate climate change.
Like, it's climate change in real time when you're out there. You can see it happening right in front of your face. You can feel it on your skin. But for some reason, we're insistent on cutting those trees down.
Kyle's art, it makes us feel like we have an obligation to act because we see ourselves in the problem. Be the hard facts that really strike us, but ultimately it's the emotional story of how someone or something was impacted that mobilizes us into action because we feel a sense of injustice.
Just the canopy. Maybe I'm just gonna draw just the canopy. Really love this big cedar that's down here at the end. That's like, it's like roots like clinging to the whole mountainside or hillside here at the bottom of the valley. Well, the painting that I made from the top of the road there at the gate that was called Hold On Mackie was about literally holding on to the forest, right? Like Mackie's holding on to the root in the sleeping dragon in that painting. And that was a symbol of us all collectively holding onto this forest to try and prevent it from being logged. Hasn't been logged yet. So I guess we're still holding on, or still trying to do our best to hold on. Maybe kind of like this tree down here. This is like collect mode, you know? This is collect time, collect shapes, collect light. Collect atmosphere maybe sometimes.
I first met Kyle in Amsterdam, I think it was in 2014, 2015. We worked the same design job. Kyle had his own studio in Amsterdam. Well, studio, it was a corner in his in his room. There was two small walls with paintings on, mostly watercolor paintings, sketches as well.
I didn't come here with any notion of what I wanted to make, no idea of like, need to be telling any kind of story or anything like that. Like that's gonna happen later. After a trip like this, that's gonna happen in the studio. When I look back at all the documentation and all the notes and all the sketches and stuff that I made.
He was trying to explore a bit what kind of painter he was and what he wanted to do. It was really at the beginning of things.
I think I used to be a lot more anxious about making a good drawing or making a good painting or resolving something when I would do stuff like this. You know, like I put like a lot of pressure on myself to be good at what I'm doing. But the more that I do it, the less that I feel that pressure. I think I just know that I'm going to get back to the studio, and so many things are going to change between now sitting here making this drawing and when I'm in the studio. And I don't know, maybe I'm going to paint a cedar in a few months from now, and I'll be like thinking like, oh, I need like a really energetic canopy in this painting I'm working on. And I will have done the work now, right now. It's already like stored in my body somehow. So it's going to make painting it later easier or more intuitive. Or maybe that doesn't happen and this drawing is nothing and just lives in this cardboard and duct tape folder forever, and that's also okay too.
I remember we went to Copenhagen together and he didn't have any money for beers. I was like, okay, how is this going to work in the next few years? What about painting? Is this really my main job?
Try this. I've got a friend Niels with me who came all the way from the Netherlands to see this devastation. What a fun idea of vacation, you know, but it's important. More people around the world got to see what's going on here.
Addiction isn't the right word. I'm not addicted to the work. That means something else, but maybe it's like akin to that. Like I feel such a responsibility now to keep doing this work because I've seen so many people trying so hard to collectively work together to try and save these endangered ecosystems. Now that I've found a place in that for myself where I can see the repercussions of the on-the-ground work, I feel like I can't stop because the climate clock is ticking.
Can kind of tell when you're talking to somebody that's heartbroken, you know? That's heartbroken, but who isn't sort of clamoring to sort of resolve that feeling, mend that feeling, feel better. Somebody that's choosing to be heartbroken each day.
It's hot. I feel like I'm decomposing.
And conduct themselves as though they are.
Just like this clear cut.
And I think you see that in the work that he does.
I feel like whatever might be left alive of this tree in the root system, little bits of it that might still be hanging on. Maybe there's some kind of an energy transfer happening here up through my feet, from the tree into my hands and into the pencil.
That's something that we really need to, you know, make the resistance beautiful.
Holy shit. About 4 meters across this stump.
I didn't really want to have a family. I didn't really want to have a kid or anything like that. You know, I kind of like being alone. I feel like my personality is pretty well suited to the long alone time work, But the more that I do it, the more that I want to keep doing it, the more that I want to keep pursuing conservation and journalism and environmental protection as a means for making new paintings. Because it's just so much bigger than myself now. So many things at stake that are well beyond my control, but somehow still seem to circle around the research that we are collectively doing.
This ideal image of the pristine wilderness is not what Kyle's interested in painting. So, there's fires and there's clear cuts and there's loggers and, there's dead fish in streams and all these sorts of things. So I think that those are other ways in which his work is changing this idea of what Canadian landscape can be in a more contemporary moment. I think, what he talks about in terms of his work being a form of slow journalism is definitely coming through and sort of witnessing the changes that are happening on the landscape.
I grew up exploring old-growth forests. I grew up gazing into tidal pools, getting lost on beaches, forgetting that I felt hunger because I was so enthralled by the natural world. As an adult, I've lost that awe I think we all have, that we used to have as a kid. And I think that people are always chasing that sense of awe and wonder. I think that Kyle's artwork makes me remember why. It reminds me of when I was a child and I looked at these places for the first time.
We've had clients and visitors that have never seen his work before have actually been here for an hour, which is almost unheard of. Most visitors, it would be a 2-minute walk around. It's just the natural flow. But I think that with the accompanying text and all the layers of meaning that are part of the works, that's what makes them stop, and then they come back and bring their friends or family, and it's quite touching actually.
Space can be anywhere. A space is a room or a forest or a logging road. A space doesn't have any meaning attached to it. But a place is when you have made meaning in that space. A space becomes a place through lived experience, through community, through collective action. Through seeing a shooting star together, hiking a clear cut together, and seeing the look in your friend's face as you trudge through the thatch. That was just another space, just some open space with some decomposing trees. But by being there, doing the work on the ground, living it, especially when you share that with somebody else, well, now that space has become a place with importance and meaning and reference. It becomes a place that you want to go back to, you want to check up on, you want to revisit. A place that lives in your head, it lives in your memory, it lives in your mind, it lives in your heart. It is the affect. And for me, eventually becomes a painting. I think that that's translatable to other people who might not have ever been to some of these places that I'm painting. They can see my lived experience in the paint. My intention, my work, my care, my looking, my process. It shows that I've cared for that place and shows that I've thought about it and considered it and lived there and got this opportunity to not just maybe make an impact on one tree at a time while I'm in the forest, but to maybe make a big, broader impact by channeling the community and the resources and the privileges that I have within the art world towards fundraising for conservation efforts. Yeah, that wouldn't have happened if somebody far away didn't see my painting. painting can have a positive impact on the world.